Hey, welcome, folks. Welcome back to the Worship Team Training podcast. We are so glad that you guys are here. How are you today? It's a fantastic day, and it is October the 12th, 2016. Welcome to the Worship Team Training Hangout. We have our special guest with us, Plumb, who is sitting right here, and she's about ready to go. So as we get to that this morning, we want to share with you also what's happening with what's coming up today, what's coming up later this week, and other things that we have coming. You can check out all of that good stuff over at worshipteamtraining.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to us here on the podcast, audio playback, as well as live on YouTube and Facebook Live. We appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. What we do here at Worship Team Training is providing 1 and 2 day workshops, as well as mentoring for worship leaders just like you. You can find everything else out that we have at worshipteamtraining.com. So today we are talking about breathing out His grace. And hey, we got to let you know this too. We're not just going to have Plumb on this one time. We hope to have her back. And also, just to let you guys know, when we do these broadcasts and when we air about twice a month on a Wednesday at 11 o'clock. You can check out our social feeds on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, others, and you'll see all the good stuff come out. Today, we are talking about, as a church, that we do not exist for ourselves. When people come to our services, they are in need to breathe in grace and truth and to share the same hope to their communities, even for those of us on worship teams. Are we just leading songs, or are we saving souls? Now, before we get into that topic, hey, I gotta also let you know, to tag on with those same words that were just spoken. You're gonna hear more about that coming up on the program, October 26th. Be sure to check out our next episode with John Chisholm, Stop Measuring Up. And then November the 9th, we have Maddie Montgomery. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then also coming up at the end of November, we have our boy across the pond, Mark James. It's going to be a lot of fun. You cannot miss it. So today we are talking about the topic of how do we breathe out grace within our community. So, hey, who better of a topic to help us speak on that from this multi-format recording artist, songwriter, performer, and author with over 500,000 albums and 2 million singles sold worldwide. She has established herself impressively of a broad career, highlighting her otherworldly voice as a performer with truthful lyrics and impact as a songwriter. She's been a staple in the CCM market. Her music has been spanned over multi-format charts, and she's found a new home with a high-profile film and TV placements. She has co-written cuts with artists such as Michelle Branch, Mandisa, Mandy Moore, a great lady, Jackie Velasquez, Natalie Grant. Her next single, Smoke, is poised to impact radio. Actually, it's already been released back now in August 2016. For more information, you can find out Plumb's music at plumbmusic.net. Everybody, please welcome to the program, Plumb. How are you today, Plumb?
Well, that was quite the introduction.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I don't really know who that person is. I don't know if I can live up to her.
All right.
Well,
you're doing an awesome job.
It's great to have you, Plumb. And thank you. And as always, everybody, we have our fantastic co-host, Swift. What's up, my brother?
I've never done that before, but I thought it would be cool. After that introduction for Plumb, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, you
unbelievable. Great job. Golly.
Oh, man.
How's everybody doing?
It's nothing compared to you guys. We miss Tony. Tony and Stephanie are out for today, but when we have Plumb back, we'll have them join us. So they get the message. So, I don't know who that is. Tony, Stephanie? Anyway, but it's great. I mean, this is the fun that we're having, and we're bringing all this back to the podcast. We thank you guys for listening and watching today. So we are talking about breathing out His grace. I mean, Plumb, I read over your ministry and your partner in crime, Lori, who's been helping me to understand more and more about what's been happening in your world, and how I just found when I sat down and listened to your story, I thought, gee, this is exactly what we need to have on the program, because this is highlighting what a lot of people go through, even in ministry. We find ourselves in the church. You said that you heard from your pastor say on a Sunday morning that we just do not exist for ourselves. And, a lot of worship leaders and a lot of worship teams, I think it would do us good to be reminded of that. So just to kind of jump into our first question, and I'll let you go ahead and take a stab at it if you're good with that. There are a lot of things, as you know, that we claim are ours, but when it comes to church, what are the things that rightly belong to God?
Wow. It's a big question. It's all His. It's all His. All the gifting, every opportunity, and every door, every life. It's all His, and it's so easy to get caught up in certain parts that you think are yours, or that you're impacting the most, that maybe your God-given gift is being used more than someone else's, and then you are then faced with the agenda of self and ego and pride. And so it's a fine line to walk there, and you just have to be surrounded by a community of people constantly reminding you and each other, this isn't about us, and none of this is ours, and it's all His in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Swift, what do you think about that? What's that like for you?
When I was reading that question, I was like, man, I mean, how can you, separate the two? I mean, that you can't really. I mean, it's almost like a bold question. What is His and what isn't? Everything is this entire universe, and we're here. We're created to worship Him, and it is a hard question to answer. I don't think I have an answer for that. I have just a statement to say, everything is. I mean, and you're right, Plumb. We get so caught up in our ego, and it's a natural feeling almost for us as humans to, when we're leading worship or we're out doing our shows and our concerts and stuff, and people are like, oh, it's so phenomenal, it's so great. I always direct it, and I know it sounds cheesy probably to some people, but I say praise God. I'm glad I have the opportunity to share God's heart with you through song. And that's usually my general answer, because I wanted a way to stop, to deflect that off of me and direct it to God. And and so I was like, Lord, I mean, is there any way that I can, you have to say thank you, of course, because, you put in the hours of practice, you put in the time to go out and sing, but it's all His to answer that. Everything about what we do, I'm always telling my kids, you got to be thankful for little things like waking up in the morning, and, because you're not promised anything. So everything is all God's, period.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks, Swift. Plum, tell us, can you share, like, when we talk about that everything is God's, of course, you have to look at your music in that same kind of way that it's God's given. He's given it as a tool. Can you kind of back us up a little bit? Tell us about your story as to, what God breathed into you, and did you start out in the church? Did you start out in the secular world? Tell us about your upbringing, if you don't mind.
Sure. I started out as a baby.
I was born, and then I learned to walk,
and then I find myself on this show. How'd that happen?
No, I was born to a Christian home. I have sang as long as I can remember. I sang with my dad in church for the first time, I think, when I was 3. He's more of a choir singing kind of guy, loves music, but it was, in the probably middle school, early high school, that I recognized that I had a gift. And I just, not for 1 second, did I ever say I want to be a singer when I grow up, or I want to lead worship or anything like that. I just loved to sing. I sang any chance I could. Homeless shelters, nursing homes, roller skating rinks, coffee shops, you know, you name it. And if there was like a school talent show, if there was, you know, anything, 4-H related. I mean, I just, any chance.
You just went old school, 4-H.
I know.
Yeah.
I love the roller rink thing. That was, wow.
I sang at a 4-H event. And so I just, you know, some people were more athletic. And so, you know, they love to play basketball, but they don't necessarily want to be an NBA star.
That's like Swift here. He's the same thing. Same thing with Swift.
Yeah.
Well, I did opt to be NBA star. I was just too short.
But Swift carries his own disco ball in his pocket.
Nice.
Every time.
Nice. Well,
You gotta be prepared.
Sorry to interrupt you, Plum. Go right.
No,
go
it's
right
okay. So I just, I mean, so I loved to sing, but I didn't, you know, my dad got up every day for work, and, you know, he hates when I say this, but he kind of complained when he would have to go to work, or like, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. And so I always associated work with something that you don't really love to do, but you know, you have to do it. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so I dreamed of being a wife and a mother, and then doing something between, you know, marriage and kids, you know, but hoping to stay home with them after they were born. And that at one point I thought it would be a nurse, but I was a terrible student. And I loved to socialize and tell stories and make friends and be social and all that. But I was just out of high school when I was asked to sing backup for somebody, and that led to singing for someone else, and then for someone else. And it just kind of kept, and so I ended up moving to Nashville and not going to college after high school because I kept getting so many offers to sing, and I just said yes. And that led to studio work. And I just thought, well, we'll just see what happens. And a little bit, maybe just a few weeks or so before my 21st birthday, a label had called and asked if I wanted a record deal. And I really, if you know, this is old school. Do you remember the show Candid Camera?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I literally was like, is this a joke? Like there's people standing on, like, lining up in downtown Nashville would give anything. And I'm just.
No, that was before punk.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was being a nanny. I was teaching gymnastics. I was selling my clothes to consignment shops. I was babysitting. I was singing demos. I was just kind of making it work, and I was having a blast. I was 20, and somebody said, "You want a record deal?" And I said, "Sure." And so I kind of signed my life away, and I ended up, and I'd written stories and loved poetry, but never, ever, ever had written a true song. And when they asked me to write my own music, I felt kind of bitter, because I felt like it's not going to be very good if you're asking me to write it. And looking back, I'm really thankful that they pushed me to do that, because I feel like they saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. It was a gift that God had given me that just took someone else kind of pulling out of me. And I began to write, and record after record, you know, has been sort of a kind of a representation of where I was at the time. And if you go back, I mean, I'm really glad that God's been able to use me and my music despite me, but there's been a tremendous amount of my career spent about me. So back to your question a little bit ago, like, is it his? Like, it was all his. And I would say with my mouth, this is not about fame and fortune, but I totally cared about being famous and rich. And there's that little seed that was just planted in there that would grow little by little, that was like always just a little discontent, because I wanted the CD to sell more, or to get more shows, or to make a little more money, or the chart to say something a little different, or, you know, to be nominated or get an award, and then say that I don't care about it. And I cared. And then to say, I don't really care what people think. I only care what God thinks. And I totally cared what people thought. And it wasn't until my marriage completely fell apart that I met Jesus in just a totally different way. That upbringing that I just mentioned, you know, I'm sure it was well intended, and I think a lot of us have this background, but I was afraid of God. I remember looking out the window. I grew up in a church that, you know, in fourth grade, they were telling us all about Revelation. And so I remember in fourth grade, like looking out the window, you know, and then going and checking to make sure my parents were still breathing. You know, I cheated on
straight.
Yeah, like I cheated on a test or something that day, and I'm like, wait, I'm not gonna go to heaven.
Are we still here?
Yeah, and there's no wonder that I honestly, I mean, around 13 or so, I started struggling with severe anxiety, and and panic attacks and stomach aches. And there's no wonder. Like, I mean, I'm 41 now and I can look back and go, oh, it's because I was just full of fear and, and a lot of religion and not as much relationship as I should have had. And I don't fault anyone for that. I think it's all well intended because you want to protect and tell kids like, don't do this and don't do this. But the Jesus that I met is the Jesus that I believe he truly is in the last few years when I had my life sort of fall apart, that he's not been waiting for me to mess up and then go, aha. He's been walking alongside me, grieving with me, having compassion for me, and has forgiven me long before I've even asked him. And he's just put a path in front of me to say yes or no to. And man, I wish I could say that every time since then I've listened to that still small voice and I've responded to it and trusted it no matter how I felt. But that's not true. I mean, my marriage fell apart. We ended up remarrying each other 18 months later, which is just a whole nother.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, just another beautiful story. But even with that, once you trust God with something and you start telling the whole world about it, there's a target on your back. There's lots of little discouraging things come up where you're frustrated and you feel almost challenged to even talk about your story, because what if you had a fight with your husband that day and then I've got to go out on stage and tell people how we remarried each other and it was beautiful and you're like, but wait a minute, it was beautiful and it is true, but real life is still real life. And I think the miracle, the grace is in being able to choose what is right no matter how you feel. Choose what is that's love, and that's truth, and that's pure, and that's good, which is what you could. It's completely relevant to leading worship. Of just, if you get up that morning and you don't feel like it because you're mad at the worship pastor, or you're mad at yourself, or you've done something wrong. There's sin in your life, and you've got to get up there. And the good thing is, we're not powerful enough to mess up his master plan. We can miss out, but we're not powerful enough to completely mess it up. And so even in our sin, even in our selfishness, even in our frustration, even in our just being tired, not having a good attitude, or not feeling like doing it, choosing it anyway and trusting him to use it and fill us back up. And that's worship. I mean, to be able to say, I love you, Jesus, and I choose to be used by you, no matter how I feel, no matter what the circumstances are. Thank you for using me. And even though you may feel a certain way about a certain situation or a certain song, or, a certain Sunday, or the message that you're trying to, collaborate with, because I know a lot of times that happens where, the pastor's wanting music that's relevant to the series that they're teaching on, or the sermon, and there's a lot of politics that get involved in that. And even in Christian music, even apart from leading worship at a church that's your home church, like being out on the road every single day, there's politics, there's all kinds of things that come up, and you just have to say, you know what, God, you're bigger than all of that. And recently a lady came up to me and I was telling her about something I was frustrated with my record company. We were just kind of chit-chatting, and I said, I feel distracted. And she said, I was about to go on stage, and I said, I feel distracted. And I said, I feel like, here I am in front of an audience of people. God wants to use me. He can use me to encourage them, to give them hope. And I don't even want to go out there. I'm frustrated about some things, and it's distracting me. And she said, well, tell me kind of what it's about. So we kind of talked briefly about it. And she said, well, don't you believe that God is big enough to deal with what's being done maybe wrong, or that's frustrating you? Like, God's big enough to deal with that, right? And I said, well, sure. And she said, so you go out there, you let him use you because it's an honor, even though you don't feel like it, like it's an honor. And you trust in that. You have to trust in that he will honor that honor. And she was in the right place at the right time. I needed to hear that, because I was just really frustrated. And so I don't, man, if there's anybody out there that wants to hear someone else say, you're not alone, I'm right here. I mean, I'm really thankful for the opportunity to do what I love. Unlike, hearing my dad complain about his job, I love I love what I do, but I'm still human. And I mean, Satan is running rampant and wanting to, speak lies into our ears and discourage us and help us. Sometimes it's even just saying, you're not worthy to really do this. There is somebody that could do it a little bit better, or this artist or this, leader is making more of an impact. They're connecting more. They're, more relevant, or they have a better, friendship with everybody, or they're more involved in the community. Like there's all kinds of things that wants to whisper in our ears and tell us that God doesn't. Yeah. And I choose not to believe them. And so you have to rebuke that stuff, and hard, but it's necessary.
I really resonate what you're saying, Plum, and thank you for that, because there are a lot of people, not just worship leaders and worship team members, but there are a lot of people who deal with the emotional side of things. Anxiety is a really big deal, and a lot of people underplay what those ramifications really do make in a person's life. What do you say to those that are struggling with those emotions, just like you, and they're having to get up and do ministry, or they're having to get up and play drums, or get up and preach, and maybe they do have stuff going on in the background, and the story that you just shared with that one sweet lady who encouraged you, what do you say to encourage others in that same way?
Well, that greater is He who is in me, and sometimes that's all you can count on. And the good thing is, for the anxiety, it's not about me.
Right.
It's not about me. And tell yourself that. I've had so many times that I've walked out there and I've got stuff going on back here, and I'm anxious. And I don't want to do it because I feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing, or it's not as heartfelt, and I'm in the way. And God is still bigger than that, and it's not about you. And so if you mess up, or if you didn't say the right thing, or you don't feel like it was as good, then you're making it about you. And that is just so hard to not do. But I repeat it. Every single night before I go on stage, I say, empty me of me, fill me with you. Help them to see you. And when I get out there, I almost picture myself as Jesus, in the sense that, Him. They're not even looking at Plumb. They're looking at hope. They're looking at encouragement. They're looking at grace. It's not really about that girl with the crazy curly hair. It's the message of truth that God's speaking through. And that is a tremendous help to me. And I have to, maybe I'm a little crazy, but I have to repeat it. This is not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. This is you.
I think that's very healthy to say. And in fact, I was going to do a video shoot for teaching, and I called my one of our board members, and I just said, I'm not feeling it today. I feel frustrated because this is going on, that's going on, same thing as you. And he said, Brandon, you're in the right spot, exactly where God wants you to be, because you want to make it more about Him and less about you. And that just hit me, just like you. And I today I still tell myself that same thing. Swift, what's going on in your brain? Because you do a lot of worship leading. You've done music with Little Richard. You've been around a lot. So how has that been playing out in your life as well?
Well, as she was telling that story, I thought about an incident that happened with me. I had a very close family member to die or get killed, and I was leading worship in a church in North Carolina, and I called my wife because my mom had texted me, and I'm like, why is my mom texting me crazy stuff right now? And so I had my wife to confirm it, and then she confirmed it, and I collapsed in the hallway, just bawling. And the pastor came out and he said, hey man, you don't have to sing this morning. It's fine. We totally get it. I'll go and make the announcement. And I stopped him before he went. I said, no, this is exactly the time that I need to give God praise. And that wasn't me speaking, because me was saying, you're right, I need to go chill over here for a second. But God said, no, right now is, I'll never forget the song. It was With Everything by Hillsong. And if y'all familiar with that song, it's a very powerful song. It just has this huge build, and it's basically, with everything, I will shout for your glory. I will shout your praise. And man, by the time we got to the part of the wailing, I was singing loud. I think I even dropped the mic, and I was just singing so loud. And in that moment, I knew that, okay, you know what? If I can get through this with God holding me up, and I'm getting emotional a little bit thinking about it, then I know for a fact this is something that God He has put me in this position to do this. And I can't walk away on my personal feelings on certain things that I had every right to, because I had just found out a family member had passed away. And, God took that moment and used it to show people that He's bigger than all of that, than death, than life, than a moment of time that's going on in your life where you feel like nothing can be done to help you. And that really built my faith up even more so than I ever felt about God, even being raised as a teenager and being saved. At that moment, I knew, man, God is for real. Now, we all know we believe in God and we have faith, but I mean, I really knew God is for real and alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I totally get it, Plum. I mean, it's, to hear you tell that story is very encouraging, because that happens now. Even when we do shows and we go out, and my band Hope's Anchor, and we go out and we performing it. We just performed for a rock club festival, and we were the only Christian rock band there. And I mean, like, literally all these other bands' names were like, A Moment with the Demons, and it's crazy, like, crazy nutty bands that had nothing to do with God, as far as I knew, on the outside anyway. And we were the only Christian rock band there.
Awesome.
And completely ripped it up. So, and not trying to pull it towards me, but just sharing my personal feelings and understanding on, you can really like get caught up in the moment of saying, I'm not worthy of doing this. And that's just Satan tricking you. He's just using that weakness against you to take you away from the real reason you're there. Because God has put you there to use you for that moment in time, to touch people, to move. If you can get one person to believe in Christ, you did your job.
Well, I was going to say too, and like, I think it's Matthew 18:12 or 12:18, that talks about the 99 and the 1. And that is another thing, even just for those that struggle with the anxiety of all of that sometimes, that you go out there and it's like, if for just the 1, and sometimes the 1 is me, it's like sometimes that's like the brokenness that you're bringing with you, and that makes you feel unworthy, or makes you feel like not doing it, or doesn't, that's clouding your thoughts. That sometimes that brokenness that is, even our best is filthy rags, so much less our brokenness. But we bring up, I think that act of surrender of like, you know what, I don't really have much to offer today. In fact, I don't even feel like doing this, but this is all I've got, and I offer it to you. That act of surrender, I mean, it's better to obey than to sacrifice, right? So it's like we have obeyed. And if for no one else that morning, it might just be that God, it may look like there was 1,000 people or 500 people or 10,000 people, but maybe that morning it was you that He wanted to see if He could trust. And that's very convicting for me to say. I feel like even as I say that out loud, that's a message from God, even just for myself, of saying for all of us, that's what it needs to be about.
So, Plum, as we wrap up here, let me just ask you, this is, we have a lot of guests on our Hangouts, and I always ask this one question, because it seems to be the pullback of the whole theme. I mean, we're talking also today. I didn't get a chance to get to some of the other topics on our format, but that's okay, because I really believe that you kind of covered a lot of it anyway. Talking about, how are we to live out what we believe as a worship team and as leaders, and also instead of complaining about things, we need to be learning about how we need to let God do the breathing through us for change. So with all that being said, out of everything being said today, what's the one thing that you keep coming back to?
It's a competition between two things: faithfulness and the message that there's always hope. Those two things. Faithfulness probably would be my number one thing, of just, what does faithful look like? And sometimes faithful is easy, sometimes it's not,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that it's not faithful. And faithfulness is true and good and pure and lovely, and that's what we're supposed to focus on. And so what is faithful, and doing that no matter what we think, no matter what we feel, no matter what we see. It's hard to be faithful to every opportunity, but that's why greater is He. And that's why, thank God, it's not about us. It's not contingent upon us. It's not relying on us. It doesn't need us.
Mm.
It's wanting us, and we get to be a part of it.
Right.
And I think that the more we can wrap our minds around that we're getting to be a part of something that we're wanted in, but we're not needed for. And so even back to that anxiety question, just because that's something I struggle with so much, is that's also helpful to me to know that God doesn't need me. He wants me to a part of this. So this isn't about me in the first place. And, regardless of me, I can't mess up His kingdom, but I definitely can miss out. And so faithfulness would be, the number one. My grandfather, when he passed away, he had an epitaph, and it just had one word on it, and it just said "forgiven."
Wow.
And I remember that, it didn't say like grandiose father or son or brother.
Right.
It said forgiven. And when I saw that, I was 10 years old, and I saw that on his gravestone, and I started wondering, what would my one word be? And so that's the one that keeps coming up for me. Although I love forgiven, I think that's amazing. I hope I was faithful. So in this life, I want to be faithful, that to be my word, and then to be able to thought, and to be able to die and just say, I was forgiven for all the times that I wasn't, faithful. So yes, that's what I would say.
That's great.
Awesome. Guys, I just wanted to say, you can check out Plumb right here. Exhale is her new album, and you can find that at plumbmusic.net. Exhale is the new album release. You can also get that at your favorite iTunes and Amazon stores and everywhere else, but be sure to definitely check out her music. It's a great album. Plumb, been listening to it, and it's totally awesome to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And then also, of course, our brother Swift. Thanks so much for being here today, my bro.
No problem, man. I will pull over for you anytime, if that makes sense.
And Swift is on location, so you never know where he pops up, but we're always happy that he does. So thanks for that.
Yes.
Enjoy your Starbucks.
Yes.
That's right.
Oh, you see it? It's behind me. Yeah, of course.
That's right. So then hopefully, guys, coming up, we'll have Tony Guerrero will be back with us also, and then we'll have Stephanie Kelly coming up in January. Don't forget October the 26th, John Chisholm with Nashville Christian Songwriters. November the 9th, Maddie Montgomery. And then November 23rd, Mark James. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much again for being with us here on the Hangout podcast. Swift, Plumb, it's been a pleasure. Love you guys. Thanks so much. And we love you.
Thanks.
Guys. We'll see y'all back.
Hey, Plumb.
All right. Thank you.
Love your music, by the way. Love your music.
Thank
Really,
you.
really do.
All right.
Oh, are we still on? We're still on?
Swift, you're killing the outro, man. Well, we have a lot of fun here. Anyway, love you guys. You guys are great. We have a lot of fun. We'll see you back at the next Worship Team Training Hangout podcast. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.